was the biggest TV audience of the year for the final in the UK.
Was it a case of the whole of England just coming to a standstill?
To a degree, I think so. 65,000 people turning up for a victory parade is just goes to show the impact that they have made. I mean, credit to Sarina Wiegman. What a manager she has been for the Lionesses. But remember, Wiegman doesn't get a season to work with these players. She gets weeks here and there. And yet she's won the last 3 Euros. That's ridiculous. And got to a World Cup final, let's not forget, with the Lionesses too.
Liverpool have got to compete for at least the 2 major trophies, the Premier League and the Champions League, winning 1.
I'm just going to be the optimist. I'm going to say Arsenal in first, Liverpool second, City then Chelsea.
Everybody needs an Arsenal fan in their life. I have never met a more optimistic bunch than Arsenal fans.
Sunderland have gone big in this window. They've spent over, 100, 150 million? So
Yeah, play for Newcastle. I'm contractually obliged to say Sunderland are going straight back down.
Welcome to This Sporting Planet, the world's view of sport, this week from the UK, USA and Singapore. This is the show that brings together international voices who are passionate about sport and live and work in the regions where major events are taking place. This week we are discussing one of the biggest sports competitions on the planet, making a return for the new season. It attracts some of the biggest names in world football, and eye-watering sums of money are spent on everything from player contracts to sponsorship deals, broadcast rights, and more as well. The new Premier League campaign is just days away.
Ah, yes, and us here at This Sporting Planet cannot wait. Before it gets underway, though, there are a lot of questions that we're going to try and find some answers to. Will new signings hit the ground running? Can anyone stop Liverpool, or perhaps a resurgent Manchester City, from claiming the title? I think maybe Arsenal might. How will the promoted clubs fare in a league that is notoriously difficult to stay in after coming up? Plus, what signs can we read into the pre-season campaigns? We've got the Club World Cup that recently concluded as well. What will that do for Chelsea's hopes? And most importantly of all, for myself and Natalie, what can we expect from our beloved Arsenal and Brentford? We will try to answer all those questions and more on this episode of This Sporting Planet.
Natalie Sawyer here in the UK alongside just Edward Russell in Singapore. We are going to be joined by a Premier League legend from the US a little bit later on, where we're previewing the new Premier League season in this episode. Shaka Hislop, the former Newcastle, West Ham and Portsmouth goalkeeper, is that name to look out for. But first, Edward, we need to talk about the final of Euro 2025, which saw England defend their crown against the world champions Spain in a remarkable final to cap a remarkable tournament for the Lionesses. From a build-up that was deemed as chaotic, with big names missing, notably 3 players with some 200-odd caps worth of experience. There were also players coming back from injuries that were named in the final squad, to playing knockout football in pretty much every match after their opening group game defeat to France. The Lionesses' ability to snatch a win from the jaws of defeat multiple times kind of summed up their tournament. And that's what happened in the final as well, Edward, against Spain. That sort of never say die attitude, the resilience, the character, the endurance as well. I mean, they were simply fantastic. And what that showed is that experience, in this case, didn't matter as much as unity did that was built in the team, something that Sarina Wiegman spoke about. Before, Edward, we get your thoughts on what happened then in Switzerland, let's hear from some of the Lionesses with their reflections immediately after the final whistle.
I think you could see how emotional we all were tonight. It was pretty incredible. We've dug very deep this tournament, and we've got our rewards in the end by winning. I mean, it's pretty incredible. I'm actually lost for words. To do it once, but to do it twice is pretty insane. Really insane. I mean, we've gone behind in most games in these knockout stages, and we've come back. We've shown resilience, we've showed character, and we've smashed it and won. And we've won! Haven't we?
We're English, and you can't write us off. When we went down tonight, when we went down against Sweden, against Italy, losing our first game against France, we show so much fight, we show so much character, but we show most of all what it is to be English, and that's not going down without a fight.
Bit mad. I don't think it's sunk in. It hasn't sunk in yet. The emotions of a game, of a final, the highs and lows that you experience throughout the game, and the resilience to come back and win on penalties. So, yeah, I don't think it's sunk in yet, but yeah, it's just incredible, and we'll celebrate as a team tonight.
What everybody just did, we're the first 23 to bring a trophy home from from foreign soil. So I am so happy, and I feel very blessed to be part of this team and this generation now.
Who's leading the celebrations?
Who's leading the celebrations? All of us. Everybody's pulled their weight for the tournament. They're going to pull it tonight as well.
Hannah, you're a two-time Euros winner.
Penalties taken by so many people. Everyone was.
I know, when you put it like that, it doesn't seem real, it doesn't sound real.
We've been the same.
I can't really remember most of the game, especially the penalty shootout. It's just all a blur right now, and I think, like I said, it's going to take a couple of days for it to process really what's just happened.
We've just proved everyone wrong. It's not only the hate that I've received, it's the hate that the whole team have received, and I don't really know why. We bring trophies back to England and yet we get disrespected more and more, and I think today we just went and showed everybody what we're capable of doing, and we'll hopefully continue to do going forward.
All the England players knew and Sarina knew, and I'll do anything to play for England. I've always said that.
How much pain medication are you on just to get you through this tournament?
Yeah, a little bit, but I couldn't take it all the time, so I've not been training all the time, but just played the games and fought for my team.
Well, she's a bit superhuman, to be honest. She is one of a kind. I actually don't know anyone like her. And yeah, she's a trailblazer, and she's one person in this team that inspires a lot of players and a lot of the future generation. So yeah, she definitely inspires me.
Some great takes there from the Lionesses after winning back-to-back European titles. And you heard from the likes of Alessia Russo, Chloe Kelly, Lucy Bronze, the goalkeeper Hannah Hampton, captain Leah Williamson, Jess Carter was there as well. And just to pick up, Edward, on that last point, talking about Lucy Bronze there and the fact that she played the entire tournament with a fractured leg. It's just ridiculous when you consider how she got through a tournament, how she got through one game, let alone a tournament. I don't really understand it. But I mean, a lot of people were sort of likening her to sort of a Stuart Pearce. That's sort of like, never say die. I'm going to just do what I have to do to get my country over the line. And it was just amazing.
There's that famous Terry Butcher photo, isn't there, where his head's bleeding. He's got that headband on. It does feel a bit like that, doesn't it? Yeah, and she was so intent to stay on in that final as well, wasn't she? When she went down and she was it's okay, I'll get through it. No, absolutely incredible stuff. I mean, my family's all in the UK, and my mum, she's not a football fan, she was sending me photos that her friends were sending her of the 65,000 odd people in the mall celebrating. And that came after some of the players saying, are you sure we've booked out the whole of Paul Mall? I don't think we're going to be able to fill it. It just goes to show how much the country got behind that team. I mean, obviously you're in the UK. Just give us an example of how much this meant to the country. Was it a case of the whole of England just coming to a standstill?
To a degree, I think so. And you're right. 65,000 people turning up for a victory parade is just goes to show the impact that they have made in women's football and just on English football and an English sport really as well. It's simply tremendous what they have done. And yeah, that final, everyone that I know of was rooting for them. It was the biggest TV audience of the year for the final in the UK. So that goes to show how much we were gripped as a nation to see them create history. No English senior side has ever won back-to-back major tournaments. No senior English side has ever won on foreign soil. And they've done that. They've ticked it off with, well, I was going to say with relative ease, but it didn't feel like that throughout the tournament, really, because it was a lot of sort of hiding behind a pillow or biting your nails till there was nothing left. But they still had that spirit, that incredible character that even when they were 2-0 down against Sweden, that didn't matter. They knew they could see this game through like they did. And yes, they had to come through a penalty shootout or have to come through extra time, etc. But it's just, as I said before, it showed that experience wasn't as important as just making sure you had the right blend of players. And also, what was an interesting debate over here, Edward, was when we were getting towards the final and you're talking about, well, is Sarina Wiegman going to make personal changes? Surely she's got to start Chloe Kelly, for example, because Chloe Kelly was so impactful. Michelle Adjumang, likewise. But clearly, Sarina Wiegman has looked at those players and thought, you're my finishers. You're the players I need to come on when the game isn't going our way or where we need the game to sort of shore up, whatever it is. Those were her finishes, and that's why they were so crucial, and that's why they didn't start these games, because Sarina Wiegman had a plan for them. And I mean, credit to Sarina Wiegman. What a manager she has been for the Lionesses. And let's not forget what she did for the Netherlands, having won the Euros with them previously too. She's an incredible manager. And I sort of started thinking about her impact as well, Edward, on football in general, because, Emma Hayes, for everything that she has done for Chelsea, is incredible. We know that, now working with the US women's team. But remember, Wiegman doesn't get a season to work with these players. She gets weeks here and there, and that's it. And yet she's won the last 3 Euros. That's ridiculous. And got to a World Cup final, let's not forget, with the Lionesses too.
And all her calls turned out to be successful, not just sticking to her guns and leaving the finishers to finish and, resisting that temptation to start them when they've been doing so well all through the tournament. But the way that she dropped her stalwarts from the previous campaign and, well, I guess a number of them she didn't drop, but made it clear that they wouldn't be her first choice. And then the likes of Mary Earps decided to call it a day after that. And I think when you mentioned the character of the team as a whole, they only led for 4 minutes and 52 seconds in the entire knockout stage. That character and that belief and this transformational story transcends each and every player's individual stories. Just talking about Mary Earps and the fact that Hannah Hampton came in as the number one. I mean, she was born with such a serious eye condition that she was told by her doctor she should never play football at all. And here she is, a Euro 2025 winner. And of course, we talk about Wiegman as well. She dropped Hannah Hampton, didn't she, for disciplinary issues, and she told her to go away and mature a bit. And that worked out well. She did just that. She came back a much stronger player as a result. She played a key role in helping Chelsea claim that unbeaten domestic treble. But everything that Wiegman's done and everything that each player has done seems to have culminated in this perfect moment.
Completely. And there's calls for them all to be given some sort of honour when the next honours are given out, for example. And I'm sure there'll be plenty more in terms of like the BBC Sports Personality of the Year award, which is a big award over here, we have to say. It's a big honour to win that one. But just quickly, how did this tournament go down where you are? Is women's football a big thing over in your region?
Look, in terms of the Euros itself, unfortunately, no broadcasters in this Southeast Asian region bought the rights, which is a shame, and it made it quite hard to follow in this part of the world. But it is funny that whilst the Women's Euros was going on in Europe, over here there was the Soccer 7 series taking place in Singapore, which featured both men's and women's team with equal crowds, it has to be said, actually, playing in the same tournament. They would interchange the slots throughout the day, but on equal pegging. The 2025 ASEAN Women's Championship is kicking off in a few days in Vietnam, and the draw was made yesterday, I think it was, for the AFC Women's Asian Cup, which is taking place in Australia in March next year. Australia will take on Philippines in the opening game at the Perth Arena, and they're expecting a capacity crowd of 60,000. So whilst the Euros itself wasn't necessarily a big deal here, women's football is big and it's growing. And there are so many exciting women's football events to look forward to over here in the next 6 months to a year.
Congratulations then to the Lionesses. So can they go one step further with the 2027 World Cup coming in Brazil? They have to get through qualifying first. That starts in February of 2026.
Now, just a reminder, in between episodes, you can keep up to date with all the global sports news on our social channels and our YouTube page as well. We'll have full-length interviews with all our guests, and make sure to check them out. And whilst you're there, of course, please give us a follow, subscribe, and share with all your friends and family. And do leave us a review as well, if you please.
Let's turn our attention now to the new Premier League season. It all gets underway with the defending champions Liverpool taking on Bournemouth on the evening of Friday, the 15th of August. Delighted to say we're joined by someone who made over 200 appearances in the Premier League for the likes of West Ham, Newcastle and Portsmouth. And that is Shaka Hislop. Shaka, how are you? Thanks for joining us on this Sporting Planet.
You're most welcome. You're most welcome, Natalie. No problem at all.
Do you know what? It sort of feels like a funny year in the sense of when this last season finished to the new season starting, football's just continued with the Club World Cup, and obviously we've had the Women's Euros, but that doesn't mean we're not excited for the new Premier League season, are we?
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it as usual. As you say, it's been an odd summer in that some clubs have been in action, some aren't. You're not sure how that's going to affect their pre-season, or more to the point, the start of their seasons, or the season in general. So there's a lot of unknowns, well, around Manchester City and Chelsea. For the others, it's the unknowns is kind of a transfer window that I guess we didn't see coming in some cases. I'm talking about Liverpool spending. Arsenal have strengthened in a much needed department. So it's kind of all to play for here.
It is, isn't it? Let's start with last season's league champions then. You mentioned Liverpool, and you mentioned the big spending, of course, Shaka. They're the big spenders so far. They brought in the likes of Jeremy Frimpong, Florian Wirtz, of course. That's the big ticket item. Hugo Ekitike, and maybe even Alexander Isak as well. It looks quite ominous, doesn't it, if you're not a Liverpool fan this season, that they could run away with it again.
It really does, especially when you consider, listen, yeah, Liverpool were deserving champions last season, and I know Manchester City had an off season. I'm sure we'll get to them. But certainly the last 3 or 4 months of the season, once Arsenal kind of fell off, nobody was even close. And the bigger question was Liverpool the best team in European and world football? PSG kind of put an end to those discussions, and deservedly so from a PSG perspective. But Liverpool have gotten all the better, certainly domestically. We see how that pans out in European football. But again, they've, for as good as they were last season, I think they're a whole lot better. They have not diminished in any department.
Yeah, I mean, with all the players that Ed has just listed, and the possibility of more incomings as well, with Isak, maybe a centre half too, which is what many are suggesting they need as well. I mean, it just feels as though, one, they're striking while the iron's hot from a position of strength because they are the Premier League champions. But my goodness, I don't think anyone saw them spending as much as they are doing, Shaka.
No, they didn't. Knocking on 200 million in two players in Ekitike and Wirtz, and another 100, 125, somewhere about, if Isaac does arrive. Just kind of given who the Fenway Sports Group have been throughout their ownership of Liverpool Football Club. I don't think anybody saw this coming. Liverpool can spend, we know that. They're a big football club. But if we're talking in the region of 300 million plus in the summer, nobody expected. You expect that from Manchester City, but nobody expected that from Liverpool. Not with this ownership group and how they've spent in the past.
For me as well, it kind of feels like this window signals the proper end of the Jurgen Klopp era and the start of a new era, whether that is the Arne Slot one or not, because you've essentially got two new fullbacks on both sides in Frimpong and Gyökeres, you've got a new central midfielder in Wirtz, possibly two new attackers. That's a whole spine. I mean, next season, this could be a whole different team, really.
It really could, and Arne Slot, to his credit, it's not easy taking over from someone like Jurgen Klopp, given what he represented to that football club. Just ask anybody who's tried to succeed Sir Alex Ferguson how difficult it is to fill those shoes. But Arne Slot comes in, wins the league, and I think that goes a long way to not only securing his legacy, I guess, but sitting and filling that void from Jurgen Klopp, and players and fans buying into Arne Slot as manager, and now he's been backed by the ownership, and this, yeah, to point out, it really is his team. If there was ever any doubt during the course of last season, this really is Arne Slot's team, which I guess adds a certain amount of pressure as well, but he would welcome that. You manage Liverpool regardless of what that spending is, what it looks like. There's pressure to it. On a slot, Sydney has reveled in that, and now has kind of made this team his own.
So when you consider the amount that they're spending, what is the minimum that's going to be required? It's not just going to be the Premier League, surely.
I think I Premier League without question. Well, a trophy, a significant trophy, and be in the race for whatever else is to offer. So, argument's sake, let's say they win the Champions League, they've got to chase down whoever's top of the Premier League all the way to the end. Liverpool have got to compete in or for at least the two major trophies, the Premier League and the Champions League, winning one. And you see how the cups are always so difficult to predict, especially the Carabao Cup, where most big team managers make wholesale changes. The FA Cup, sort of, at times they do make changes. If memory serves me correctly, Liverpool made changes for the FA Cup for last season. Whether Arne Slot does the same again this time around, we'll see. So yeah, you have that an excuse as to going out early in those competitions, but certainly the two big ones you've got to compete. But to that point, I thought they did wonderfully well. Well, of course, this season, winning the Premier League, you go to Paris and win, and okay, PSG, who certainly the second half of last season have proven themselves to be not just the best in European football, but all of a sudden propel themselves to be in the discussions around the best teams we've seen of recent years, of the last decade, overturn that result, and PSG go from strength to strength. So the bar was set last season for Liverpool, and they've got to, at the very least, match it.
Can I just say on this whole Alexander Isak thing, and when we're recording this, he hasn't signed for Liverpool, but who knows, the transfer window is moving so quickly right now. By the time this comes out, he might well be a Liverpool player. First of all, I'm an Arsenal fan, Shaka, so I'm very angry because he told Arsenal, I'm not leaving Newcastle, I'm not interested in the move. We went off and signed Gyökeres. We'll get onto Gyökeres in a bit. And then suddenly he's changed his mind and says, I'm happy to leave the club and I want to leave the club. And now, obviously, this is opportunistic from Slot. If Isak's available, you're going to try and take him. But I'm not sure he knows how he fits into his plans because he was going to have Ekitike as his number one striker. So where do we go with all this? And also, should Newcastle, obviously you being a former Newcastle player as well, be very upset that he's been tapped up?
Look, we start with Newcastle. Newcastle have every right to be upset. And now, tapping up is part and parcel of the game. It has been for a long time. I'm under no illusions about that. I think the weird, I guess, sequencing of events around this is, to your point, that Isak says he's not going anywhere, be it Arsenal or Saudi Arabia, and then all of a sudden things started to happen quickly. Now I suspected that Liverpool were speaking to Isak, and then Newcastle started to speak to Ekitike as the replacement for Alexander Isak. Ekitike says, nope, I'm only going to Liverpool because Liverpool are sounding out different options. It's like I'm only going to Liverpool. And as a result, Newcastle say, well, we don't have a replacement for Alexander Isak. We're not accepting bids. Ekitike completely moved to Liverpool, and then all of a sudden it just starts to spiral in terms of Isak, his position, what he wants to do, and it put Newcastle in an awkward position in that their number one target as a replacement has committed to Liverpool. They then go searching as to who can we get. Sesko is the latest of those names. We see what comes of that. So Sesko by no means a like-for-like replacement at 22 years old. Certainly physically, he's not who Alexander Isak is. So again, you're not sure how that works out from a Newcastle perspective. So Newcastle have every right to be upset in that how quickly this happened, and they weren't able to secure who they would prefer to be their Isak replacement. From a Liverpool perspective, Ekitike, you're right. I think he was brought in kind of with the thinking that he would be their preferred, he would be their starting number 9. Albeit they weren't able to get the number one choice in Alexander Isak. They spent a lot of money in bringing Ekitike in, and then Isak, for whatever reason. And again, the odd thing is, and as I say, tapping up is a part of the game. So what's today's? We're the end of June, but I don't think communication between Liverpool and Alexander Isak started 2 weeks ago. I think that communication had to start 2 months ago, 2.5 months ago, and why it waited until now to all of a sudden kind of take on this gravity about it is a little confusing to me. What happened in there? What happened during that period? But whichever way, it seems that Liverpool are going to get Alexander Isak. Ekitike, who plays in the same position, now all of a sudden becomes a very expensive second choice or rotation player, albeit he's young and and it's probably a good investment in the long term. But just in terms of spending right now, that's an awful lot of money to spend on someone who you're not quite sure is going to start.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because it does have a knock-on effect. You've already mentioned the Benjamin Sesko link, but there's also, if Edward's laying his cards out on the table, I'll lay mine out as well. I'm a Brentford fan, Shaka. So this has a knock-on effect for us because Johan Wissa has been linked with Newcastle as well. And just on the Newcastle side of things right now, without Isak, where do you think they end up? I mean, they've got Champions League football to contend with this season too.
Um, that's a big question. That's a good question because Isak has been so important to Newcastle over the last, was it 3 seasons since he's been there? And I think that kind of showed itself, um, not just last season in Newcastle qualifying for the Champions League, but the season before, where he had a lot of injury issues, and you saw how that affected Newcastle's season, albeit a season that also had Champions League football, and Newcastle adjusting to that. But by the expectation coming to that season 2 years ago, um, Newcastle were disappointing, and I think a lot of that was because of Alexander Isak's kind of injury issues during the course of that season. That settled down, and you saw how it played out in terms of results, in terms of league finish last season, and now without him, and again, if you get Sesko in. He's a good option, but he's not Alexander Isak. He's still learning the game. He's what, 22 years old. How does that pan on for Newcastle? Because I think a lot of how Newcastle plays goes through Alexander Isak. Whether Sesko is that player who can play on the counter attack. He's tall. Newcastle have fantastic wing play as well. So maybe it is more about getting the ball wide and getting those crosses in. So Newcastle will have to maybe change a little bit of their approach. So there's so much to this that as we sit right now, it's just an unknown. I think kind of given where everybody else are, I still think Liverpool, Manchester City, Arsenal, I think Chelsea right now are ahead of Newcastle in terms of where they are and expected league finish. Outside of that, I'm not sure who else. So at best, I'm thinking Newcastle finish fifth. Kind of given the fact that again that striker position is an unknown, and you expect a surprise or two from somebody. Seventh or eighth is also not out of the question for Newcastle.
Yeah, Newcastle were just here in Singapore, actually, as part of their preseason tour. I was hosting that where they played Arsenal, and they looked light without Isak. I thought Elanga did well, having recently just joined. But when he looked at that bench, and they ultimately ended up losing to Arsenal in that match, it looked very light indeed. Let's move on to Arsenal then, because as I was hosting that event, it was all very exciting because we got a heads up from the Arsenal comms team that Viktor Gyökeres, who just signed that morning, or it had been made official that morning that he'd signed, could well turn up at the stadium. And right up until the last minute, we weren't sure whether or not his plane was going to make it in time to walk the pitch and be unveiled before that match. And I was able to unveil him onto the pitch. And my first thing I've got to say is he is a big, big man as he walked past me. He's 6'2", but he's thick and stocky. And I just feel like he's going to be such a handful for defenders. And finally, Arsenal have signed a striker for the first time since, Aubameyang in like 2019.
Yeah,
Is this what Arsenal need, Shaka? Are they going to win the title now?
Whether they win the title or not, I mean, the easy answer is time will tell. But without question, it's what Arsenal have needed for quite some time. Listen, and I've been fairly critical of Kai Havertz. He's not an out-and-out striker and did as well as he could. But Arsenal have been screaming out for that pure centre forward for the last 2 or 3 years. And why Arteta hasn't addressed that issue before now, I find a little bit confusing. But they got their man. Certainly they got a player in a very good player in a position that's much needed. Now, I think in terms of Arsenal winning the title, and again, I as you said, I make Liverpool favourites. Manchester City, again, I'm sure we'll get to it. Is this odd conundrum because surely they can't be as bad as they were last season? If we remember Manchester City of seasons before last, you expect them to be there and knocking on the door at the absolute least. Surely last season is a one-off. So I don't make Arsenal favourites, but if Arsenal are to win the Premier League, you've got to get 25 goals from Gyökeres, and you have got to get a same return in every single department from the rest of the team, in that you still have to be as good as you are on set pieces. You still have to have Gabriel and Saliba and as critical as some maybe, myself included, around Arsenal's reliance on set pieces. You still have to get that return from set pieces. You still have to be as selfish defensively. You still have to, well, let me not say still, but you have to avoid injuries in key areas. And why I took back my still is because of Saka's injury last season. You saw how that impacted Arsenal. You avoid some of those key injuries. You get a return from you get a similar return from everybody else, and somewhere between 25 and 30 goals from Gyökeres. You're in the conversation without question. But all those things have to come together.
The thing is, they've been in the conversation for a few seasons now under Mikel Arteta. I know he won the FA Cup in his sort of first season in charge, but nothing else has come to fruition. Now they've got that striker in. I mean, the pressure surely ramps up for Arteta that he's got to deliver something, and it has to be something big.
Yeah, without question. And the pressure ramps up because, as you mentioned, for the amount of time has been there, for the money that's been spent. Listen, finishing second to Manchester City there's no real harm, there's no real hurt in that. Kind of give them who they are, how they spend, give them who their manager is. But then all of a sudden, you get Arne Slot coming in, winning the title in his first season, and that adds pressure to Arteta. It says, well, if Liverpool can do this with a new manager, how come we haven't been able to take that extra step? And again, it all coincides with Manchester City being as poor as they have been under Guardiola. But it certainly has, well, both neutrals and Arsenal fans alike asking serious questions of Mikel Arteta. And I think this season he has to deliver. And while, yes, he's been in the conversation, and the record books will show Arsenal's now finished second, what was it, 3-4 seasons on the spin. They've been in the conversation probably through Christmas, through February, maybe even March. But come April, it's not really been much shouting in terms of Arsenal's title charge. At the very least, you've got to get to the end of April, May, and the title is within touching distance, and have everybody kind of looking at remaining fixtures and guessing as to where points will be dropped. If we aren't doing that with Arsenal in the first week of May, then I think it's a disappointing season.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Arsenal spent, what, £180 million so far this window. They could spend more if they get Eze in as well. He has to win some significant silverware. Otherwise, I do feel his days are numbered. And on that note, I'm just a little bit worried that perhaps we're putting too much expectation on Gyökeres' broad shoulders. He scored what I think
comes
was
in the territory, though. Comes in the territory.
No, I know, it does. But I mean, this is a man who scored 54 and 52 in Portugal's Premier League, where Darwin Núñez was tearing it up a couple of seasons ago, and we saw what happened to that when he came to Liverpool. So, yeah.
not only same. Not Darwin was it 37 or something in roughly the same number of goals.
Yeah.
So no. I get the point and I get the comparison, and I understand the concern, especially if you're an Arsenal fan and you've had enough of people telling you, giving you a hard time about finishing second. But certainly in terms of strikers and their availability, Gyökeres was second only to Alexander Isak, certainly in terms of English football. And we've discussed the Alexander Isak kind of timelines. So I think it's a move that Arsenal and Arteta had to make to bring Gyökeres in.
Let's talk about maybe a team like Chelsea, who, if you go back to when Todd Boehly and Clear Lake took over, we were all sort of scratching our heads with the money that was being spent, ridiculous sums of money. And they were bringing in youngsters who were all thinking, hang on, you kind of sometimes need to keep experience in your team. But anyway, fast forward to what's happened this summer in the Club World Cup. They are world champions. They can say it. They can put the star on their badge and everything like that. Do you think something like the Club World Cup and winning that and beating PSG like they did, and many people expected PSG to win that one, do you think that can be a significant boost for them coming into this new season?
Yes, it does. It has to be a significant boost to them. It also adds a little bit of pressure to Maresca and this entire squad. No, even so, and I thought, listen, give Chelsea their credit. I thought they deserved that win against PSG. I am one that I did not see that coming in a month of Sundays, given how good PSG have been. I thought PSG kind of were very good during the course of that tournament as well. Maybe Um, not great against Bayern, or albeit winning 2-0, and then even more disappointing in the final against Chelsea. But give Chelsea their credit. Give João Pedro his credit. I think he came in and added finishing a spark, certainly in terms of his movement and his link-up play with the likes of Cole Palmer, in a way that, with the greatest of respect, Delap and Nicholas Jackson hadn't done during the course of the summer. And indeed, I don't think Nicholas Jackson has done probably since Christmas of last year. Well, up to then he was kind of good. So give Chelsea and João Pedro their credit. But then you kind of see some of the kind of head scratching transfers under Clear Lake and Todd Bowley. Todd Bowley, who's kind of stepped away from the limelight a little bit more than he was to start with. I'm sure he's trying to put some separation between him and those early months. But for instance, the speculation around Xavi Simons. Now, I like Xavi Simons. I think he's a good player. I think he's a very good player. But you sell Madueke to bring in Xavi Simons. That for me is confusing. I just, those kinds of things for me just kind of show that Chelsea are still a little bit scattergun in their approach. They've had a couple of very good hits, João Pedro, Cole Palmer, who have mentioned, along with others. Caicedo has come really good during the course of last season, so they've had their hits, but just every so often they're just these moves, these transfers, this speculation that just has you questioning. No, and again, for as highly I think of Xavi Simons, I probably do more so for Madueke, certainly in the Premier League, given who he's proven to be in the Premier League for Chelsea. So these kinds of things just kind of make me question Chelsea and some of the things that may be happening behind the scenes.
Yeah, I guess the good thing for Chelsea in that Club World Cup campaign is it allowed players like Cole Palmer to refine their form as well, because he was struggling towards the end of last season, and then suddenly he becomes the player of the tournament.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think anybody questions Cole Palmer's talent or his importance to Chelsea. But you're right, Edward. Towards the back end of last season, it was decidedly poor. There's no, by what we expect of Cole Palmer, he was poor. Very good in the latter stages of the Club World Cup, especially, and against better opposition. So hopefully that's the spark that he needed. So again, we see, and it's the odd thing about talking about Chelsea and their prospects, and especially in the context of this Club World Cup, is how it changes Chelsea's preseason. And again, as we discussed from the top, how does that lead into the start of their season, exertions during the course of the season? Will there be injuries? There's just this unknown around those teams that have played in the Club World Cup, and how it affects their preparation, how it affects them long term. So again, because this is unknown territory, it's difficult to kind of surmise as to what direction this all goes for them in particular.
Yeah, I think even at the start of last season, Cole Palmer didn't get off to the best of starts, and he even said it was due to the Euros. And so you do wonder if, as you say, the Club World Cup, what impact that will have on him and everyone else. Then you're heading into a World Cup the next year, and then another season on top of that. There is an element of player welfare. We've discussed that plenty of times on This Sporting Planet, and you'll be able to find that on previous episodes for sure. But if we switch to another club then that also competed at the Club World Cup, Manchester City, they, like Chelsea, got a lot of their business done early on when the window was open for a short period. And it was interesting that Pep Guardiola said that he wanted to trim his squad down because he didn't like having such a big squad to deal with, because he didn't really like disappointing his players. And they've got a little bit quiet since then, albeit that they brought in James Trafford, haven't they, for a British record for a goalkeeper. But as you've mentioned already, they can't have as bad a season as they've had before. So from what you've seen of them at the Club World Cup and all the new players that have come in, are they going to be one of the closest title challengers, or is it really just a two-horse race with Arsenal and Liverpool?
I think almost by default, you have to include Manchester City, and it's and put last season down to a one-off. That default being, and while you're absolutely right, Guardiola has just made, which I thought was kind of an odd statement, that needed to trim his squad, he's the one who kind of brought those players in. And listen, I get it. Kind of given the injury crisis during the course of last season, they spent a lot more in January than maybe they would expect it or usually do or would have liked. But then to make that an issue, I don't know why Pep Guardiola um, did that. That aside, by their standards, or more to the point, by everybody else's current standard that we've seen during the course of this transfer window, Manchester City have been remarkably quiet. And maybe to that point, Guardiola is just happy with his squad, happy that Rodri is back fit and playing again, and confident that he was the reason, he was the one factor around City's disappointment last season. So maybe that puts City back to where we knew them to be two years ago. But it's just so difficult, kind of given the quality that we know that squad has, given the goals we know that Erling Haaland can score, given the player that we know Phil Foden can be, who he wasn't last season. And you kind of give him so much around Marmoush's addition in January and the impact that he had when he came in. You just want to feel that this is going to be City closer to who we know of 2 seasons ago than who we knew last season. And as long as they're closer to 2 seasons ago, they are again going to be in the conversation. And if you think about Manchester City in those good years, when they're at their best, what they did better than anybody else is manage the second half of the season. When teams start to tire and cup competition start to become a factor, City somehow are at their best, at the very least, in the league. So you cannot discount City as we sit right now.
All right, so we've mentioned the main contenders, but I don't think we've actually kind of decided who will win and who will be in those top four spots. So let's get some predictions before we let you go, Shaka. Should we start with you? We'll start with the guest of honor.
So I'm gonna go. You want me to run through a top four or just give you my top one? How are we doing this?
Let's do it. Let's do a top four.
All right, I'm gonna go Liverpool to win it, Arsenal to finish second, Manchester City third, and Chelsea fourth.
Kind of is where I would go with that one as well, Shaka. I just can't see anyone beating Liverpool with the strengthening that they have done this summer. I just think it is really ominous for everybody else, and it does feel as though everything is coming together for a bit of an old school top four, shall we say. It's a bit sad, really, because I can't see Aston Villa. I mean, Aston Villa barely done any business. I don't even know if they have done any business. Newcastle are obviously in a situation of losing maybe their best player. Forest can't have a similar season again,
no.
I assume. So yeah, I just sort of feel it's got to be that four that you've said, and probably in that order as well. Go on, Edward. You're going to back the Gunners?
I am, only because I can't bear us to finish second again. But I think honestly we probably will, but I'm just going to be the optimist. I'm going to say Arsenal in first, Liverpool second, City then Chelsea.
Let me just say, everybody needs an Arsenal fan in their life. I have never met a more optimistic bunch than Arsenal fans.
Hang on, you haven't met Brentford fans. We've gone through a summer of
You've got nobody left.
We've got no one left. And we're all still saying we're going to be all right. We're going to survive. So just a quick word, Shaka, on the relegation pictures. We've seen in the last couple of seasons, the three that have come up from the Championship have gone straight back down. This time we've got Leeds, we've got Burnley, and we've got Sunderland. Do you think one of those three, if not two or all of them, can stay up? And how do you see that relegation picture?
I think of the three, there's only one has a possibility of staying up, and that's Leeds, and I give that a very slim possibility. I'm partial to Leeds, because of Ellen Road and that fan base. I love playing there. I love who they are as a football club, and so I say Leeds more from my heart than from my head. But the other two, I don't see them staying up now.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it, to make that step up, as we've seen. And Sunderland have gone big in this window. They've spent over 100, 150 million. So
Yeah,
they've gone,
and they've
for
Newcastle.
They've got Granit Xhaka in as well. I know you
And,
can't say that.
I
You're
played for
right.
Newcastle, so
Wrong person's
I'm
class.
contractually obliged to say Sunderland are going straight back down.
So your 3 to go down are the 3 that came up?
No, I'm going back in Leeds to survive. I don't know who takes their place, but I'm back in Leeds to stay up.
So long as it's not the bees, that's all that I care about.
You'll be fine. I think if any of the existing Premier League teams are going to go down, I think it might be Wolves, because I think them without Cunha are going to struggle.
Yeah, it's a good shot, actually.
I actually think Palace is a bit of a problem, only because, and I say this only because they haven't strengthened. Oliver Glasner is desperate for players. He said recently they've only got 17 outfield players at present, and they've got European football as well. That could be a bit of a problem. I love Palace, though. I'm not saying I want them to go down. I think that's an issue to consider as well. But it's a horrible situation for whichever club has ended up in it, as we all know. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. I've thoroughly enjoyed this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, you can come again. You're an honorary member now.
All right, pencil it in.
I am a little bit amazed, but I kind of understand it as well, Natalie, that we talked about the contenders for the title next season. We didn't mention a word about Man United, despite the fact they spent about £120 million on 2 players, Matheus Cunha and your mate Brian Mbeumo. What do we make of those signings? Are we not considering them in the mix for top 4 finishes?
Yeah, I think that's a big ask, really. Although I know that Ruben Amorim, when he took over at Sporting in the summer that he had to rebuild his team, I think he actually went on to win the title the following year. I'm not saying that at all is going to happen with Manchester United, but they can't have as bad a season, certainly. But isn't it funny? You're right. The default used to be always Manchester United. Yeah. They're always going to be a part of that conversation, but yeah, I can't see them quite getting to the top 4, but I think they'll be a top half finish. And look, devastated as I am that Brian Mbeumo has left, and believe me, I'm going to own up to something, Edward. When he released his goodbye video on Instagram, I was in a car park, a supermarket car park, just about to go into the shop. I couldn't go in because I was sobbing my heart out.
No,
and I don't really cry. I did. I sobbed, and I had my 14-year-old son next to me going, "What are you doing?" And I was like,
"Okay, so hang on.
Deal with it."
What hurt more, Thomas Frank leaving or Brian Mbeumo?
I think both were awful and sad. I had a horrible feeling in my stomach when Thomas Frank left, but the Brian video got me because it was all the memories on and off the pitch, the things that he's done. And, he's been such an incredible player for us and such a lovely man as well. But I think it's just a sad loss for us in that respect. So, yeah, I did not expect to sob as much as I did. Then I rewatched the video a couple of days later and I still cried. Ridiculous as it is.
You've still got one more video to cry to once Johan Wissa releases his goodbye video. But anyway, moving on. Look, the fact that United have signed these strikers or forwards is because last season they scored 44 goals, the average of, I think, about 1.15 a game, which was their lowest in a top flight season since the mid-70s. But in Mbeumo and Cunha, do you think they have enough now in terms of goal scoring? Because they're talking about signing a number 9, because I guess they can play Cunha and Mbeumo on both sides, and Højlund isn't the man to go through the middle, perhaps Sesko is. Do you think they've got enough firepower now with those 2 men?
I think, look, Brian Mbeumo is an incredible player, and what he can do off the right, if he plays off the right, that is, you don't know quite what Ruben Amorim is going to do with him. I think it'd be foolish not to play him off the right because that is his strengths, coming in on his left, and you'd never want him to cut back because he can take a shot and tends to score with them as well. And Cunha is an incredible playmaker. Who wouldn't want a player like that? The only issue I think you have with Matheus Cunha is his off-the-field antics, or even some of the antics on the pitch that leads to a red card. But if he can calm himself down, you never know. That there is something good about those 2 signings. I'd be excited potentially about those 2 signings for Manchester United, but you're right, they still need a striker of some sort. There's a talk of Ollie Watkins as well, which would link Brian Mbeumo back up with him from the Brentford days, and that was a very fruitful, well, it wasn't a partnership because there was 3 of them with Said Benrahma as well. But there's no reason why Manchester United can't be optimistic. I just don't think they're going to have as good a season as they did before.
I didn't want to mention it with Shaka as well, but if it comes down to Sesko choosing between Newcastle and United and he ends up going to United, I think Newcastle fans can be pretty aggrieved because this is a side, Newcastle, who finished 5th. They're playing in the Champions League and they lose Sesko to a team that finished 15th. But I guess it goes to show that, you've got current form and then you've just got the history of the club, and that tends to win out. The Bees, very quickly. You're clearly not buzzing about the season ahead. Do you think they can still... Is it a matter of survival? Should we put it that way? Is that what we're looking at this season, a transition season?
Do you know what? This is the first season in a long, long time I'm going into one of an unknown. We have no idea what is going to happen with Brentford. We've no idea how a Keith Andrews Brentford plays because we've only had one pre-season friendly and you had 2 different starting 11s in the first and second half. So I'm cautiously optimistic because I have to believe that, like everyone says, the project, you have to believe that the appointment of Keith Andrews is the right person to come in to replace Thomas Frank. Not an easy job, certainly, but it would be nice to sort of put aside they're only good because of Thomas Frank. It would be nice to put that aside if we can stay up. And Brentford have never been in the relegation zone since their promotion to the Premier League, which is a big feat for a club of our size. So if we can end up the 17th and never drop into the bottom 3, I'll be absolutely delighted with that, Edward.
All right. I think what this conversation has shown is that who knows what's going to happen this season, but whatever happens, it's going to be super exciting, and we cannot wait for it all to get underway.
That's it for this episode. Make sure to subscribe to the show via your favourite podcast provider so you never miss an episode, and make sure to leave us a review as well. We've even got video versions of our podcast available on Spotify for you to enjoy, so why not give it a go? You can also watch the show on YouTube as ever, and we'd love for you to get involved in the discussion in the comments. So let us know what you think on everything we have discussed in this podcast.
Yeah, we'll be back on Thursday, the 7th of August, previewing tennis's US Open, which takes place later this month. Will the Jannik Sinner-Carlos Alcaraz rivalry renew yet again in New York? Can Aryna Sabalenka defend her title to win her first Grand Slam of 2025? We'll be joined by US Open quarterfinalist turned mental performance trainer Patricia He to get her thoughts. We look forward to speaking to you then, but for now, from Natalie, Shaka, and myself and the rest of This Sporting Planet's team, goodbye for now.